What do you say to those in government who say if there are underwhelming pledges from big players like China and India this week, it's not the PM's fault and you should cut him a bit of slack?
Well, I'm not in the habit of cutting the Prime Minister a bit of slack. It's our job
I
to
guess
hold
that.
him to account. And he's about to be in charge of a world summit that is meeting at an absolutely crucial time. And as Boris Johnson said at the beginning of this year, this was supposed to be the year of British leadership in the world. And what we've seen so far is a completely underwhelming G7. And I really worry for what's going to happen at COP. Yes, there are things that we have committed to, but we don't half blow hot and cold as a country. I mean, just look at the budget, where the Chancellor has just cut tax on internal flights just a few days before COP. We're signed up to in my brief, we're signed up to a an energy charter, which, listen, I mean, it was signed up 30 years ago. It's completely out of date and it needs to be updated. But it's being used by energy companies to challenge sovereign states who are trying to get to net zero. So Holland and Italy are being taken to court by coal companies for the decisions that they've made as a government. I mean, it's pretty outrageous. So it needs changing. Lots of countries have said it needs changing, and Britain continues to sit on the fence. So I mean, I want to give credit where credit is due, but I just wish there was some consistency. So I don't think that we lead by example in the way that we could do and we should do if we really thought these things through. But I think also that before we get to COP, much of the work should have been done. And the work should have been done with the kind of the deep negotiations that needed to be done internationally in a half a complicated thing to get the world to come together to agree to cut carbon emissions, even though it's obvious that we need to, and we, we're under a complete obligation to get this right. But I feel as though this world leadership that was much vaunted by this government is not really happening. In fact, what happened immediately before the G7, we had a big row about Northern Ireland. What we're having immediately before COP is we're having a big row about fish. We are not putting ourselves in a position whereby we have always been the country that acts, and because it's in our interests, we act multilaterally. We act with other countries. We're a relatively small country, but we have major clout because we work with others. Now, Boris Johnson and this government have seemed to have lost the ability to do that. And in a crucial year like this, I find it more than worrying. I met the 500 plus climate delegates that turned up at St Pancras yesterday with Greg Hands, and their enthusiasm and their optimism and their hope was wonderful. It was overwhelming, but I am concerned that really what we should be achieving at COP is we should be saying, right, we've made all these promises in Paris to stick to 1.5 degrees warming, no more than that, otherwise we'll get to a tipping point. So how are we now going to go about doing that? Give us your plan. How's it going to work? Put it on the table. Now let's work out how much carbon the world is creating. And unless we are as tough with ourselves as that, we're not going to get an agreement that's going to be worth the paper it's written on.
No, you just mentioned the fishing row. Can I ask you,
Yeah.
what do you make of this plan that's been floated into the Sunday papers today, which suggests, I think it was Sunday Telegraph, which is it suggested that actually we could divert away from Dover and Calais and we could use Dutch and Belgian ports instead. And there was an admission it would cost a lot of money. But do you think that's a bonkers plan? Do you think it's a realistic plan?
So I think that the British government should be listening to the fishing industry. And the fishing industry is quite clear about this, that we need to get a negotiated settlement and agreement with the French. I'm not saying that the French are easy. I can remember 30 years ago them burning carcasses of sheep and so forth. We know how they can get, but we also know that the fishing agreement has not been sufficient. Within the Brexit agreement, we knew that there were ongoing problems with it. And to be quite honest, I think that we have seen another example of the government just being complacent, not understanding the amount of hard work, not glamorous work, not photo opportunities, work that needs to be done behind the scenes to make sure that you're engaging with people and finding solutions. Now, the Brexit deal has many, many holes in it, and we need to be working at repairing it. And it's in France's interest as much as it is in our interest. I mean, our exports to France last year went down 26%, but the exports from France into Britain went down 32%. So it's in both of our interests to sort this out. And it isn't just goods, it's services as well. I mean, the exports to services have collapsed even more. And this is all about us not having a sufficiently good day-to-day relationship with the French, with the rest of Europe, to sort out problems that are in our mutual interest to sort out.
So you think it's yet another example of the skinny Brexit deal? That's what's really to blame here, not the French government?
Well, I think that in the past, what happened when they were burning sheep, it wasn't the government that was involved in this kind of behaviour. It was various people who the government just looked aside. And actually, the deal within the European Union was sufficient for difficulties to be ironed out. I think that there are still mechanisms within the withdrawal agreement that can be used to iron out difficulties. It's just that they're not being used.
Yeah.
And so that's my central point. And
Well,
actually part of the problem is that, government departments seem to be perfectly happy to kind of go, oh, Brexit, oh no, it's not, this isn't us. No, pass it on to Lord Frost. And Lord Frost can't do all of this. And this is why we stumble from crisis to crisis. We're not getting government departments because they kind of live by this mantra, get Brexit done. As far as they're concerned, they daren't admit that actually the Brexit needs an ongoing negotiation, and the deal was a skinny deal with lots of holes in it that need to be sorted out. They don't want to admit to that, which is ridiculous,
and
because it's quite obvious that there are all kinds of holes in it, but also that it's in our interest as a country to continue to ensure that the deal works, and that we patch up the holes that are there. There are vast areas where there really isn't any deal at all. I mean, you look at services, there's hardly any Brexit deal at all in relation to that. So we do need to be, for the sake of both Europe and Britain, be sorting these matters out.
and you're famously, Emily, we could call you a Romaniac, couldn't we? And you're now saying that actually you're fully signed up to the Make Brexit Work camp that Keir Starmer announced at party conference.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the fact that we left the European Union, but we've left. I mean, what can you do? I mean, we've left. So now what's in the interest of our country? What's in the interest of our country is to make Brexit work, which means that we have to continue to talk to the European Union and patch up the holes that are there. And that's the situation. Can I give you some more stats?
Go
I've
on.
got them written down here. Right. So last week, the ONS data came out on trade for the first half of the year, and our trade with the European Union has gone down by 23%. 23% by comparison with the first half of 2019. And that can't just be blamed on supply chain problems, because trade in services has gone down even more than trade in goods. So trade in services has gone down 28% and trade in goods has gone down 20%. So the government's gamble was that we'd be able to make up all of that with our trade with the rest of the world. But that isn't the case either, is it? The trade deals that they have are simply not sufficient to make up for the amount that we're losing with our trade with the rest of Europe. And this is really important because our economy depends on us being a great trading nation. And our nearest neighbours, we need to be trading with properly. And we have put up all kinds of barriers, but with the barriers, some of those barriers can be eased, but we're not doing it because we're fighting about fish and we're fighting over Northern Ireland. This is an
Thank,
ongoing problem and it
thank
needs to be treated seriously.